You
There you
are
go.
not on the team. The team is white. It is Christian. If you're not those things, you don't have a chance. And if you are those things, you still may be put on the outs if you don't have the right viewpoint. You know, if you dare to say the wrong thing about Israel and Palestine, for example, if you're a woman and you happen to vote the wrong way, they want to take away your right to vote, then you'll be on the outgroup too. But if you do not conform to their perception of what a real heritage American is, you, your family, your kids, your mom and dad, your friends, your community, they are all on the outgroup. And so I just can't wrap my head.
But before we talk about establishment Democrats, we're going to talk to the co-host of Breaking Points, Krystal Ball, about how she has pissed off the entirety of MAGA. But the game is rigged. Unfortunately, Krystal is a nice white woman from the East Coast, so the game is rigged in favor of me because of my brown skin and Musliminess. They just hate me more, Krystal. No matter how hard you try, I take
I
the
know.
gold. For those who
You have a head start. It's not fair.
It's totally not fair. This is gonna be like Crystal's gonna be the Riley Gaines of progressives. Like, why not me? Why didn't I finish first? For those who haven't been following, Krystal has really, really pissed off and triggered MAGA and alienated white nationalists and Nazis. And I have, oh boy, they are so upset at me for the past week now because I responded to Donald Trump's hateful Thanksgiving post, which has now been followed up by a hateful policy and words against Somalis, immigrants, people from third world countries, shithole countries, straight up Nazi language, folks. I'm not going to sugarcoat this bullshit. I'm not going to whitewash it. I'm not going to do economic anxiety, racial trip up, racial flare. Why use all these words when one word will do? Racist, Nazi, white nationalist. They're now using words, Krystal, remigrate. This isn't the first time you use it. This is the second time they've used it. By they, I mean the Department of Homeland Security tweeted out the word remigrate. Now, you all watching are normies. You might be saying, what's remigrate? Remigrate is a Nazi word, a word only used in white supremacist circles that is a synonym for ethnic cleansing, specifically getting rid of everyone who looks like me or comes from a shithole country. And this has been part and parcel of the plan. And ICE is the Gestapo of this white nationalist regime. And so let's first talk about how Krystal has alienated and triggered MAGA and white nationalists. Krystal, you and Jen decided to be really racist against Latinos. Why would you do that, Krystal? You seem like such a nice person.
Well, I think that Jen, they really hate her. She might be actually up there with you in terms of the level. She has a gift for triggering them. So I feel like now, I don't know, Daily Caller and these other right-wing tabloids, they just watch their show, I've Had It podcast, to find anything, pull out anything that they think may work, because something about her as this like Southern white lady, you know, seemingly like wine mom type, being so aggressive, they just lose their minds over. So one of the things that we were talking about is, you know, the horror of ICE in general, and specifically how horrific it is that, you know, they're all masked up, but you see their eyes and it looks like someone who, you know, oftentimes would be last named like Ramos or Hernandez. And it's like, okay, obviously the moral compass is not there for you or anyone else who's doing this work, given what it is, what it ever was, but especially what it is at this point. But you even lack the self-preservation instinct here, because guess what? You are not on the team. You are never going to be on the team. It doesn't matter how much you beat and assault an immigrant and tear the kids apart and pepper spray the Halloween parade and pepper spray a baby in the car or arrest an American citizen because they look at you the wrong way or crash the car into them or shoot them. It does not matter. You are not on the team. The team is white. It is Christian. If you're not those things, you don't have a chance. And if you are those things, you still may be put on the outs if you don't have the right viewpoint. You know, if you dare to say the wrong thing about Israel and Palestine, for example, if you're a woman and you happen to vote the wrong way, they want to take away your right to vote, then you'll be on the outgroup too. But if you do not conform to their perception of what a real heritage American is, you, your family, your kids, your mom and dad, your friends, your community, they are all on the outgroup. And so I just can't wrap my head around these guys. I don't can't wrap my head around any of them doing it, but especially the brown ones. Like, literally, where is your self-preservation instinct? Where is it? Put the moral compass aside. Where is just your basic self-preservation instinct?
I call them chickens for Colonel Sanders, and all communities of color have them. Muslims have them. I've called on Muslims before, Pakistani Americans, Asian Americans, Latino Americans, the Black Americans who go for MAGA, right? And they're learning now in this week, real time in this week, because I'm sure you've seen some of the Somali immigrants who voted for Trump. Some of the Latinos like, we didn't vote for this, and the reason is, Krystal, if we're to be honest, it's the model minority trap. Oh, they're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about us. You saw that Chris Rock, it's that famous Chris Rock bit from 20 years ago. I think it was in Never Scared, where he's like, these women like dancing to the worst misogynistic music. And then the woman says, he ain't talking about me. And like, oh, we're the good ones. Oh, they're going against the poor blacks and the bad ones. Oh, I'll be safe. I drink a mimosa with Karen. I golf with Chet. I drive a Tesla. I'm the good one. I'll be
Mm-hmm.
safe. And I think what they're realizing in real time this week, nope, leopards eat faces.
Yep.
Leopards will eat all faces. Leopards, especially like brown faces. So you and Jen made this observation, which I thought I've been making, everyone's been making. Even the Latino community is calling out these ICE agents who are Latino, calling them sellouts and traitors. Why was Fox so upset about this?
I don't know. I guess I'm not sure. To me, it's just so obvious, and I don't know what they were really saying about it. But um, I think they if I had to guess what their analysis was, has something to do with like, oh, even Latinos support, a stricter immigration policy, or look how many Latinos voted for Trump, et cetera, et cetera. And, I think you see now the way that the Latino numbers have shifted dramatically against them as the
Yep.
eyes have been opened to, I mean, okay, you want to secure the border, you want to lock up the criminals. That's one thing. But this is not really about that. This is actually lawlessness and chaos. It's actually violence, and it's explicitly violence against certain ethnic groups. I mean, with the Kavanaugh stops, you can now just out and out racially profile. Like, this is what they're doing. And so, literally, no, I don't care if you're a US citizen or not, if you came here the right way or not, and you've got your papers in order, congratulations. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You are still a target, right? You are still at risk. You are still vulnerable. How many videos have we seen, or how many eyewitness, personal testimonies have we seen where it is someone who's an American citizen? They tell them like, bro, I was born in California. And they're like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I'm going to arrest you. You're going to be held for as long as we feel like holding you. We're going to assault you. We're going to, you don't get your right to like make a call or consult a lawyer or anything. We're going to do whatever we want to you until such time as we, decide that you can go on your way. So it's an explicitly racialist project, which makes it sort of so precious how they're so upset about like Nick Fuentes now. It's like he's got the same fucking ideology. It's just he also hates the Jews. You guys just like, put a carve out for them. But it's the
I,
same ideology top to bottom.
No, and I appreciate you talking about Nick Fuentes. I've been following this because I'm a masochist and doing this for years. When I knew it was completely cooked, when about 2.5 years ago, if you recall, Crystal, when Kanye went post anti-Semite, pre-Nazi, post
Okay.
anti-Semite, pre-Nazi Kanye,
Okay.
with my
Okay.
mind, and he dined with Donald Trump, and he brought along Nick Fuentes. This was two and a
Mhm.
half years ago. Now,
Yep.
because I'm a masochist and follow these people, I knew who Nick Fuentes was, and I'm like, oh my God, Nick Fuentes was coming. At that time, most Americans have no idea about Groypers and Fuentes. I was more disturbed by Fuentes being there than Kanye. And then when Donald Trump was asked about, him dining with Nick Fuentes, he's like, huh, who, what, huh? And the Guardian did a post. I remember it was only the Guardian that did one article that the reason why at that time, 2.5 years ago, Trump did not denounce Nick Fuentes, who, by the way, folks, is an open, outright neo-Nazi white nationalist, a person who praises Hitler, a person who says, the Holocaust, he's a Holocaust denier, person who openly believes in remigration, right? That
Mhm.
Nick Fuentes. This is who he's always been. He's further to the right than Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes. For those who don't follow the Graper movement, they came into notoriety by trolling Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro for not being further right enough. All right. So that's when I realized Groypers are the present and future of the movement. And then in the last week, Crystal, speak about Nick Fuentes. I don't know if you've been paying attention. They asked Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, who's proudly Jewish, to denounce Nick Fuentes on CNN, refused to do it.
Hmm.
Tucker Carlson now has a rapprochement with him because he realizes he's the president future. Heritage
Hmm.
Foundation is breaking down because they refuse to part with Tucker Carlson. Steven Crowder just gave him verbal fellatio on his show. Everyone seems terrified of Nick Fuentes, even
JD
JD Vance.
Vance too. JD Vance too.
So to me, when people say, "Oh, Waj, you're being hysterical," I'm like, they're literally promoting Nazi talking points. I said that without exaggeration. They're all terrified of Nick Fuentes, and Donald Trump is he's dying before our eyes. Let's be honest. And people are like, when Donald Trump dies, everything will be fine. I'm saying, Krystal, and I want your take on this. Once Donald Trump is gone, the president future is the Groypers.
The right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I've been saying the same thing. There was this whole debate like, oh, is Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, is this the future of the Republican Party? I'm like, they call Stephen Miller the prime minister in the White House because that's the level of power that he has. And yes, I get it. Stephen Miller is Jewish. He has like Jewish Nazi ideology, but it's not really different, right? It's an ideology that says some people are better than others, an in group and an out group, and anything is justified to the out group. And in fact, everything is necessary to do to the out group. So it's the same ideology at its core. And this is the most powerful aide that is in the White House, who is doing not only the immigration policy, is also very involved in foreign policy, the refugee policy, all of that, as Donald Trump is like doddering, falling asleep, and focused on his renovations and his ballroom and whatever. So no, the future, yes, is the Groypers. The present is also that ideology. And of course, we've had all of these leaks of chat messages of the quote unquote young Republican group that were like under 40, I guess. And, other White House staffer whose messages were leaked as well. Like they're all Groypers. There was someone who did an analysis who was like, yeah, something like half of the young staffers in the White House, clearly the people who are running the social media accounts, they're Groypers. What does that mean? I mean, I almost feel like we should stop using the term Groypers because people don't know what it means. That means they're neo-Nazis. That is the
Yes.
ideology.
Yeah.
That's the ideology. And I get right-wingers sometimes because Fuentes sometimes contextually will
Go on,
try
but
to,
keep
yeah,
going.
sure. He will try to moderate his rhetoric to sound like recently he was like, oh, we should partner with the left and we'll be less cruel. And you guys just have to bend some on immigration and we can work together. Like he'll try to moderate himself in certain circumstances. So I'll get people who ask me, like, why do you always call him a Nazi? Why do you always have to call him a Nazi? In fact, Nick himself said that. Krystal Ball, why do you always have to call me a Nazi? It's like, gee, let me see. You love Hitler. You hate the Jews. You're a Holocaust denier. Like, what am I missing here? I mean, stop playing cute with this. You are very overt about what your ideology is. I'm just trying to accurately describe it here.
You and me are in these same spaces where, we go on Piers Morgan and we go on the right wing sometimes and they debate us and on Twitter and social media. And you've heard this, they call us Nazis. They call us white supremacists. They're fomenting hate against us. And I just want to give you a gift. And it comes through Laura Loomer. Who would have thought? Where Laura Loomer last week tweeted, the GOP has a Nazi problem. So
That's
from
right.
now on, you and I don't have to say it. Like, I didn't say it. Laura Loomer said it, that the GOP has a Nazi problem. And I always
Yeah,
tell them,
and she's part of it. She's part of it. Again, she wants to carve out the Jews, but everybody else, I mean, she is avowed like Islamophobe. She's
oh,
proud
yeah.
of that. She's disgusting, right? So it's so funny though. They have a Nazi problem. It's like, girl, your ideology is exactly like it, except for the Jewish part. That's it. That's the only difference.
And I find it's sad because I tried to warn a lot of these folks who were like Zionists or like liberal Zionists who I said, you cozying up to the right wing, you all don't know where they're going. This was 10 years ago. And they said, whatever, we could keep them in check because Netanyahu, his base is not American Jews for the most part. It's these white Christian nationalists. And I'm like, okay, you think you could keep them in check, right? You think you could keep Frankenstein's monster in check. Well, now you get Nick Fuentes and the Groypers and the Ben Shapiros and the Mark Levines and all these folks who went along with it. Now they're like, oh my God, did you guys realize they also hate Jews? And I'm like, yes,
Yes,
we did. It's been
this
very
is
clear.
This is the logical end point of your ideology. This is it. And so
There you
if
go.
you're surprised that suddenly, like Dinesh D'Souza suddenly surprised, oh my God, they hate Indians too. It's like, yeah, fucking course they do. Of course they do. This is the ideology you have pushed and you have signed up for. So either you need to repudiate all of that and come to the side that cares about every person, regardless of their identity, their religious beliefs, whoever they are, believes they have equal rights and are equal in their humanity. You could
Yep.
come to that side, or you can keep doing this bullshit that you've been doing where you were happy to be racist against Black people, happy to be racist against any other ethnic group. But, oh, suddenly it's me. Now I have a problem with it. It's disgusting. And that's, I like, to the question of, oh, should we partner with Nick Fuentes? Like, I feel like my bar for allyship is very low.
Mm.
My bar is you have to view all human beings as fundamentally equal and deserving of rights. That's my bar. He does not come close. He is at the polar opposite end of
Yep.
that bar. So absolutely not. No, not ever, unless you completely change the bedrock core of your ideology.
And we're going to talk about how my fear is that the establishment and some Democrats will bend the knee. I'll get to that in a second. But I want to just I want to finish out this thread here of the right wing and where it's going, folks, because I still, what's common to you and me, Krystal, because we're in the swamp, isn't common to the normies. I say, the people who are our friends and the people, who are, I'm sure our neighbors when we meet them at school, is that the end game is the Nick Fuentes and neo-Nazis. That's the only end game. It's white supremacy, remigration, white nationalism. And then yesterday, I'm sure you saw that article that came out that as Republicans are seeing that a majority of people are fleeing the GOP, that they're negative double digits on the economy, negative double digits on Epstein, negative double digits on immigration, as Donald Trump is dying. I'm sure you saw the article where they decided we're going to double down and we're going to go ultra MAGA, which means they're going to go ultra racist. And you've seen it in the past week.
Mm.
Their strategy of doubling down, Krystal, your response to that?
I actually didn't see that article. So this is news to me. But I mean, they have created a sort of trap with themselves with their base. They've created this dynamic where the more outrageous you are, the more you're viewed as an honest and authentic voice. And it
Mm.
creates a ratchet effect. And we've been experiencing this ratchet, over the, I don't know, decades at this point. You have George W. Bush, who is also racist, but, they got to massage it a little. We can do the dog whistles, but we're going to, I'm a compassionate conservative, right? And we'll keep it a little bit undercover. And then you've got Sarah Palin is sort of the first entree to this more overt, um, racialized view coming from the right. And then it's a direct line from that to Trump, who, how does he make his debut onto the sort of Republican conservative political stage? It's from Fox News, it's from pushing the racist birther conspiracy against Obama and being the person who would overtly say that. And, I'm going to hire the investigators to go to Hawaii, all that bullshit, right? Then he runs, obviously, he does his announcement speech, immigrants, they're rapists, et cetera, et cetera. Some I presume are good people. That lands with the base, and that's what he leans into. And obviously, the core of his politics has this, overtly racialist view. And so anybody who comes up, like the next person is just going to be more and more and more and more racist, more and
Yep.
more overt, because it is more true to the ideology. It's like, I'm not just going to hint at it. I'm going to actually be about it. I'm going to come out and say it. And that makes me a truth teller. So for them to get out of that endless cycle is going to take a sort of dramatic collapse, which may come of the Republican Party, a dramatic rethinking of what they're all about. But for right now, they're on a loop that they cannot possibly get out of. If you try to step out of that, then, oh, you're a cuck, you're a beta, you're a loser, whatever, you're out of the movement, etc.
It's a death loop and a death march. I've been calling it a pro-death march for a while. And the analogy that I've given is also the one that Jonathan Metzl, who's been the author of this great book called Dying of Whiteness, he was a researcher, sociologist, and he talked about it, how literally many of these voters would choose death over reform. He interviewed a whole bunch of these people that instead of choosing policies and politicians who literally would help their lives, they decide, no, we're going to double down. We're not going to be cucks. And then they died, Krystal. And the analogy that I came up with, which is similar to one that he came up with, is if given a choice between sharing a huge mansion with me and Krystal and our families, or burning down the house, they will elect to burn down the village. And I think that's what we're witnessing right now. They have chosen to burn it all down, right? If we can be in charge, you can't be in charge. If we can't be the masters, we're going to make sure you go down with us. This is, to me, a process, a pathway towards like unintentional self-immolation, as the
Mm.
country literally is going to shit under Donald Trump, and they're fine with it. Pro-death, no vaccines, more measles, people not coming to America anymore, all of our best brains fleeing, our economy going to the shit, and they don't care. They're all in, and I completely agree with you. It's like a honing missile, right? They're like, nope, this is it. And plus, they're desperate. They feel their backs are against the wall. They feel like this is their only moment, and they have to save Western civilization. So instead of just saying, you know what, maybe we're wrong about this, and also the component of the inside outside crowd, right? How are you a man? How do you
Yeah.
prove you're a tough warrior, right? You can't be a cuck. So, like Pete Hegseth did yesterday, great example. As this mother effer, this weak friggin' cuck cosplay crusader rapist man, Pete Hegseth is embroiled in a controversy of his own making, Krystal. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. Our Secretary of Defense is on Twitter, responded to some right-wing hack, and some right-wing hack said, I hope, he goes against these more narco boats. And he said, your wish is my command. We blew up another boat.
Oh, it was not just any right-wing hack. It's Andrew, what's his name, Colvett from
Yes,
TPUSA.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. There you go. Oh,
which
that the guy who's taken over from Charlie Kirk.
from Charlie Kirk, which is interesting. It's disturbing and disgusting. But it's also interesting because there was a lot made of Charlie Kirk supposedly starting to break with the neocons in his, the last months of his life, where supposedly he went to the White House and he was very against going to war with Iran and, took some personal risk to make the case against that. And there was genuine, Steve Bannon, the war room types were against the war with Iran. Tucker was against it. But with regard to Venezuela and the drug boats, there's next to no dissent from the right on this. They were so easily propagandized. All you had to say was like, fentanyl, narco terrorists. And they're like, go murder them. It's fine. Like, we're good with it. Yes, please, more boats. And so, yeah, now you've got, the Secretary of War like, yeah, I'm going to go murder some more people on your behalf. Let's go. This whole conversation about the double tap strike, it's kind of fascinating. I'm glad that finally it's breaking through that, like, it's not even war crimes. It's just murder, right? War crimes that indicate there's a war. There's no war. There's no legal war. There was no war authorized by Congress. We are not at war with drug traffickers, right? These are just murders. And the first strike was murder and illegal. The second strike also murder and illegal. But it's interesting what breaks through
Yeah,
nationally. This
yeah,
was just, the mainstream press cannot really be counted on to reliably be against things like war crimes. So it took something that was so textbook evil, like the literal textbook definition of a war crime, for them to be like, okay, this is the problem. And now we're going to talk about this. And because Pete Hegseth is just putting his politics aside, is just a chaotic, disastrous mess over at
yeah,
the Pentagon, he has a lot of enemies. I mean, he doesn't come from, the like Republican. He wasn't a member of Congress. He wasn't a senator. He wasn't a governor. So they don't really know him. They don't really have a commitment to him. The people who are under him at the Pentagon, many of them hate his guts because he just is like a terrible, terrible leader. And so he really is at risk. And now you've got bipartisan in the House and the Senate investigations into this. Now you've got senators who have viewed this video or like, this is the worst thing that I've
yep,
ever seen in my life. I think they have an actual problem with this. And listen, I'm not going to be Pollyanna. I'm sure Trump will like pardon him as long as he continues to be good to him and he won't ever have to face charges, etc. But it changes, I think, for a lot of the military, the way they're probably assessing the things that they're being asked to do. Because previously, the mindset was probably just like, I'm sure if I'm getting orders, they went through like the normal process and this has some sort of legal justification. I am not going to be personally at risk. And then you have Hegseth throw this admiral under the bus. It's like, oh, he was totally justified in the decisions he was making and I totally had nothing to do with. That's eye-opening because now you really know, like, oh, these people will hang me out to dry in a fucking second if it saves them 1 second of trouble. They have zero lawyer. They are not going to protect me whatsoever. And so even before this, you'd had nonprofit groups that provide legal counsel to serve active duty service members saying there had been a huge uptick in requests for support. Now I think you're going to see a flood and potentially, people who genuinely do defy orders and say, no, this is illegal. I'm not going to be part of this. And I think it also reveals why they freaked out so much about the Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly video where they're like, don't commit crimes, don't commit war crimes. You shouldn't commit war crimes. How dare you? Oh my God, you're treasonous, etc.
Because I think they knew. I think those 8 Democrats, again, we don't know, but I think that this was leaked and they knew. And that's why they tried to jump ahead of it. And that's why they tried to blame those 8 Democrats for the Afghan national killing, the National Guardsmen. But now they've been embroiled. And I agree with you. I think this is going to be a huge scandal. They've already effed up. You and Kyle and others, even at the left hook, we've been trying for months to let the story break through. We're like, yo, they're murdering people extrajudicially. And then furthermore, if you recall, Pam Bondi said, what we did to these Venezuelan drug traffickers, we're going to do to the leftists and Antifa. And I'm like, extrajudicially murder us?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So this is now it finally broke through that our country is murdering innocent sailors and fishermen in the most brutal way possible, folks. The video that Krystal was talking about real quick, for 41 minutes, 2 unarmed sailors were hanging at the side of a boat because forget the double tap, the second strike. Even the first strike was illegal. So after the first strike, can you imagine these 2 men having like, oh my God, what's happening? Just holding on for dear life. And for 41 minutes, allegedly, Admiral Bradley and the Trumpers sat there and said, what should we do with them? And then Pete Hegseth came in and said, kill them all. And then they killed them. So that is murder. It is textbook. Literally, it is what's taught in the textbooks of a war crime. That's what they did, which is why I think exactly what you said is now the military, there's going to be more and more leaks. The leaks are coming from the FBI humiliating Kash Patel. The leaks are coming from the DOJ throwing Chrissy Nome under the bus. They're going to eat each other. But as they eat each other, what you also need, Krystal, is a robust opposition. And this is where not only does MAGA right now hate you, they hate me a little bit more this week, but the Democratic establishment really dislikes you because you are progressive and you've been calling them out. And I want to give 3 examples, Krystal, of why anyone who's watching right now who loves the Democratic establishment, why I think it will prove my ongoing thesis, why they are failed, why their strategy of restoration and not reformation will fail, why people like Gavin Newsom will fail. And what I've been saying is that the litmus test for the Democrat moving forward to really galvanize the people, there's a couple. One of them is, do you still suck at the teat of the oligarchy? If you do, you're not the dude or the woman. Number 2, are you willing to call out Israel's genocide, or do you still suck at the teat of AIPAC? If you do, you're out. You're done. And if you're willing to throw, and by the woke, I mean the rest of us under the bus, immigrants, Muslims, people of color, and folks, they have thrown Muslims, people of color, and Palestinians under the bus. Democrats were part and parcel of the war on terror. I know people don't like hearing it. I got the gray hair. I'm old enough to remember it. They've thrown Ilhan Omar under the bus, AOC under the bus. They're Republican light on immigration. They're Republican light on crime, right? So here's my examples, and I want to give it to you, Krystal. As this has happened, the polls have come out, and the polls show consistently that not just the Democratic base, but now people around the world, especially young people, have been radicalized in real time against Israel's genocide by the genocide they've seen with their own eyes on their smartphones. You've seen the numbers when it comes to Democratic base. It's not even close. The year of 2025, it's December 5th. As this genocide is ongoing, and you know your base is radicalized, and you saw Mamdani win, and you know that Seth Moulton, of all people, has come out and said, I'm not taking AIPAC money. One of your leaders.
After he asked them for money. And they denied
after
him,
he asked them for money, they said no. He goes,
Anyway.
I'm not taking money. And after you've seen for the first time in my lifetime and your lifetime, which I don't think you and I would have ever thought this happened, that a majority of Democratic senators would come out and say no aid to Israel until they stop the occupation, right? Folks, if you haven't been around as long as me, trust me, what's been happening the past 2 years, I never thought I would have seen it. This is a once in a lifetime swing. I've only seen it before, and this is even more than when I saw with marriage equality. I was like, Obama 1, gays, we like you, don't get married. Obama 2, gays get married. This is even more extreme in a shift of what we've seen in the last 2 years. Hillary Clinton, Krystal, I think 2 days ago, voluntarily accepts the invitation of Miriam Adelson, who's the widow of Sheldon Adelson, one of the biggest pro-Israel Zionists. Miriam
Mm-hmm.
Adelson, who gave over $100 million to Donald Trump,
Donald
not
Trump.
Kamala Harris, Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell people just Hillary Clinton voluntarily deciding to appear, be a spokeswoman for Israel, and saying it isn't Israel's genocide that radicalized the people. Oh, no, no, no. It is the TikTok and the youth to be blamed. Krystal.
Yes, and that we just don't understand the reality. And it's like, first of all, I don't think people need to know every in and out of history to look at babies being murdered and say, with their own tax dollars and their government support, and say, I am opposed to this. Okay. That's number one, my starting point. Number two, in fact, the more that we all learn about this quote unquote conflict, the more that we actually do look at the history and see it not through the lens of the propaganda that you and your types have been pushing, but through the actual truth and the reality, the worse that Israel and the entire project of Israel and the movement of Zionism, the worse that it looks. So, at this point in time, think about young people moving away from Israel overwhelmingly, not just Democrats, by the way, overwhelmingly young people, basically the entirety of the Democratic Party base, and say the problem is TikTok. And not to think, maybe the problem is the genocide. Maybe the problem is bombing schools and hospitals and mosques. Maybe the problem is collective starvation. Maybe the problem is setting up quote unquote aid sites that were death traps, where CNN is now reporting people, of course, we knew this already, but they're finally getting around to it, were indiscriminately shot and murdered by the IDF and then buried, bulldozed over their bodies in shallow, unmarked graves. Maybe that's the issue, rather than the fact that we are able to access this content on TikTok. So everybody who was like me and skeptical of Hillary Clinton back in 2016 and behind Bernie, vindicated. Vindicated. Your worst vision of this woman was absolutely accurate, because
Absolutely. Yeah.
what a soulless monster to be accepting that invitation in the first place. And then for that to be your view that you express there, unbelievable.
And I was the lesser of two evils. I was never excited about Clinton. I wanted Bernie in 2016. Once Clinton got it, I'm like, Trump is going to be
Yeah. What are
disastrous.
you going to
MAGA is
do?
gonna
I
be-
mean, yes, of
yeah.
course,
What are you going
voted
to do?
for her.
But
Yeah.
but this is her showing her entire ass. This
Yeah.
is her showing the world. This is why people rejected her in the establishment. And Donald Trump, with his bullshit, and it's all bullshit, who is part and parcel of the establishment, who partied with Bill Clinton and Hillary. You see the photo of him and Bloomberg and Clinton all golfing, right? It's all BS.
Hmm.
That someone said in our community, because they're very smart, that great George Carlin quote, "It's a big club and you ain't in it."
Hmm.
Even now you're seeing why people said, yeah, I don't like you. I don't trust you because you're part of the establishment. And speaking about it, but the second example I'll give is Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom comes out yesterday. It's him and Aaron Sorkin, not the writer, but the New York Times writer at DealBook, and they're doing their conversation. He sees where the wind is blowing. He sees the polls. He sees the message of affordability breaking through. He sees that it's winning over independents. People are disaffected, young people, Democrats, even some pissed off Republicans. And he's given a layup. Should you tax billionaires? Should you tax the rich? Krystal, your response to what Gavin said.
Yeah. It's like, oh, we have a big tent party. No, I don't think we should, but I think we should have a party that includes people like Zoran who say we should. And it's like, no, disqualifying,
Disqualifying.
disqualifying. And
Absolutely.
look, it's not a surprise. I appreciate Gavin Newsom, his posting, like taking it to Trump with a great. Do that, appreciate it. But we need to be really clear about who he is. And he is not someone, when there is a choice between the people and the plutocrats, he's going to pick the plutocrats. And he has shown that numerous times. I mean, as governor of California, he blocked their single payer healthcare bill from being passed. He blocked that. It had majority support, and he came in behind the scenes and made sure that that did not get through. He's always been very closely aligned with big money, whether it is certainly Silicon Valley tech, certainly Hollywood and the film industry, but also with Wall Street. That's where his bread is buttered. That's where his political power comes from. And he's going to choose them every single time. It's also worth remembering that he came in on the side of right-wingers with this Supreme Court case about how you should be able to just clear out homeless encampments and
Yep.
criminalize homelessness. He went in and did that himself and was proud of it. He joined an amicus brief for the Supreme Court, making it legal to criminalize homelessness. That's who this man is.
Yep.
And I also want to remind people that before it was really clear which way the winds were going in terms of the Democratic base, when Trump gets elected, his first move was not to stand up to Donald Trump. His first move was not to get in there and to fight and stand true to anything approximating progressive values. His first instinct was to have a podcast where he played patty cakes with a bunch of right-wing figures, one of them being Charlie Kirk, another one being Steve Bannon, another one being some right-wing radio host from California. That was his first instinct, and not to challenge them. We all know Gavin Newsom can do that. We know he can be a great debater when he wants to, but to give them a platform to further their worldview and for him to accommodate their views. And, you said the words like throw people under the bus before. He was like totally willing, hey, let's throw trans people under the bus. Let me
Yep.
have this right winger on so I can tell you how much I hate trans people too. So that's who he is at his core. We can appreciate the role he's serving right now, right? But we have to, if we actually want to defeat fascism, we have to have an opposition party that not only fights performatively, but is going to confront capital. And that is the part that he will never do. You have to stand up to the billionaires. You have to fight them and post as hard against them as you're posting against Trump right now. And that's the part I truly believe this will become clear in the Democratic primary. There's going to be a moment where he has to choose, and the Democratic base is not taking this bullshit anymore. They're done.
Hey, he's already failed. I was talking to Van Lathan, who interviewed him. I was Francesca hosted me and Van, and I don't know if you've seen that video, that interview with him and Gavin. And Gavin, like you said, who's a smooth talker. Him and Pete Buttigieg and Cory Booker are the smoothest talkers. They always got to answer for everything, except when it comes to AIPAC and Israel. And
Mm-hmm.
Van Lathan, very sincerely, in a non-trollish fashion, asked him about AIPAC and Israel. And then Gavin, I'm sure you saw that, he was pissed off. That was angry, Gavin. I'm from California. He goes, that's interesting that you're asking me that. That's interesting. That's an interesting question. And Van, he said when he was
Meaning,
talking,
translation, oh, I guess you're just an anti-Semite. That's why you're asking me this.
and so
That was the subtext there. Yeah.
that was this that exact. Thank you so much. That was the subtext, and we explained that subtext to Vanny, and he understood that later. But it said Van at the time said, "Dude, I really was like, well, why is that interesting?" He was like very sincere. He goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, is my question interesting?" And the subtext was, "But by the fact that you're even asking me this question, you are an anti-Semite. Stop asking me that question." And he
Mm-hmm.
kept saying, "That's very interesting. That's interesting that you asked that. That's really interesting." And Van, God bless him, in the moment was being very sincere. He goes, "Why is that interesting?" Then
It's
later
just like,
found out, "Oh,
what's interesting about it? It's just a
oh,
question. Like,
oh, you're calling me an anti-Semite." Okay, but he didn't have an answer. Pete Buttigieg, silky smooth, speaks
mm-hmm.
multiple languages,
Mm-hmm.
can't speak the language against AIPAC. Cory Booker, Jen Welsh took him to task.
Yep.
And and then you're seeing, which I've been saying, folks, the two clear litmus tests for me are, can you withdraw from the oligarchy? Gavin Newsom can't. Can you withdraw from AIPAC and Israel? They can't. How can you fight for democracy and against fascists at home if you support a genocide abroad? Which takes me to the third example I want to ask you about is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the current Democratic leadership. I'm old
Mm-hmm.
enough to remember, Krystal, when given a chance between embracing Mamdani, a generational leader who came out of nowhere and almost won by double-digit points despite the entire establishment and their mother and a Bill Clinton being thrown against him, they went after Cuomo. And to this day, they still haven't embraced Mamdani. And then I
Yep.
remember Hakeem Jeffries, who I've been saying for a while, everyone says it's just Schumer. I'm like, no, no, no. It's Schumer and Jeffries. They aren't built for this moment. They're not made for this fight. You all don't realize it, that they're all corrupted. They're part of the oligarchy, the establishment. They've been groomed by them. They won't change. Yesterday, uh, when given a chance to say Juliar is a piece of shit and he was a
Yeah.
fraudster and we don't want these fraudsters in the party and Donald Trump shouldn't have pardoned him. Crystal, do you see what Hakeem Jeffrey said about Juliar? Because it's his
Yeah. Oh,
boy.
yeah. He said, oh, this was exactly Trump pardoning him was exactly the right outcome. And this is a guy, Henry Cuellar. First of all, he's the most
Wait, I'm
conservative, I
sorry.
think.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I think he's the most conservative Democrat in the House. So he's a right wing Democrat, anti immigrant. Anyway, he
Backed by
also,
Nancy Pelosi,
yes,
always backed by the establishment. Even when there were progressives in the primaries that were much better than him, they went with Cuellar.
yes. And very dirty in terms of those elections too. We'll put that aside for another day. But he was indicted. Him and his wife were indicted for this scheme where they were setting up sham consulting companies. His wife would be, I guess, the figurehead, and all this money would get funneled in. She would do no work, and then he would allegedly do favors for, it was like a Mexican bank and some Azerbaijani like oil company or something like that. So just a brazen abuse of the public trust, exactly the thing that people are so disgusted with that completely destroys our ability to function as anything approaching a representative democracy. And we have, of course, Donald Trump, loves who knows what sort of whatever was exchanged behind the scenes that led to this part. By the way, that reporting needs to be done. But then
Yep.
you have Hakeem Jeffries come in and say, I agree. I also stand for this totally corrupt legislator. And it's disgusting. I mean, it really is disgusting. And Hakeem Jeffries, did you see he also said, "Oh, I don't think we should pursue impeachment against Pete Hegseth." We were talking earlier about them, the just assassinations, the outright murder that they're committing. He's like, no, we're not gonna do anything about that. It's like we do not have with them as leaders, we do not have an opposition party.
I
And
agree.
it's, I think Democrats are going to do very well in the midterms because people are so disgusted with MAGA. I think it's going to be, I think Democrats probably will take the House back because it just looks like such a disaster right now. But again, it's not enough to win back the House. It's not enough to win back the presidency. You have to salt the earth of fascism. You have to
Yeah.
make sure that this type of movement cannot grow again. And the only way to do that is to actually confront capital and to make sure that we are actually delivering for ordinary people. We've done this in our past. This is what our history of fighting fascism in this country and around the world, that's what that was about. And so we know what needs to be done. And we absolutely know that quote unquote leaders like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are not going to get it done. Imagine if we had Chris Van Hollen in the Senate, leading the Senate.
He's
Imagine if we
great.
had, who's impressed me as well is Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna has had his finger on the pulse with pushing the Epstein files. I mean, he's always been a Bernie backer. He has really understood at some key points where the party should be and sort of dragged them there kicking and screaming. Imagine you had him instead of Hakeem Jeffries. We'd be in such a better position. So, I find it, and I'm actually supposed to, I think, interview Chris Van Hollen on Monday. Ryan Grimm was able
Oh,
to get
wonderful,
that
wonderful.
interview for Breaking Points, which I'm very much looking forward to, because he's someone who has really stepped up in this moment when so many others have sort of crumbled and really revealed themselves to be lacking any sort of character.
Chris Van Hollen has been a dark horse, excellent candidate, and I've been saying for a while that people need to rally around him, and I want to give him some props. I always try to because I want to bring the receipts. When the entirety of the Democratic establishment threw the pro-Palestine activists under the bus and were too scared to speak up for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I keep the receipts, folks. They were very muted. Um, Chris Van Hollen, senator here from Maryland, went by himself to El Salvador at risk to himself and said, I am not going to leave until I get proof of life of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He got proof of life of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. It was in the news. He messaged on it. And within 2 weeks, guess what, folks? Donald Trump was negative 19 on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, leading to a type of pressure that made them do the swap, which released more actual Tren de Aragua
Yeah.
criminals, but brought these people home who were tortured. And it shows me that if you actually stand for something, if you message accordingly, if you connect the dots, the people can be won over. What Democrats do is that they're Republican light on crime, they're Republican light on wokeness, they're Republican light on Black people, on Muslims, on immigration. I always give that example that you gave of Gavin Newsom, that folks, his first two guests on his podcast were Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, where the right wing said, oh my God, we got Gavin Newsom to move to the right on 3 issues and we didn't have to budge. Do you
Hmm.
trust a man who is willing to flip just like that and then flip back? I don't. Once I saw that, Krystal, I'm like, he's not the guy. And then I
Agree.
saw his comment on Israel. He's not the guy. And
Yeah.
then I know, because I'm from California, this is how he feathers his nest through the oligarchy. He's not the guy. Uh, the Democratic leadership, the centrists, the Lisa Slotkins, they're not it. My fear, Krystal. Now, it's this final question of you, and I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Krystal is a mama. I'm a papa bear. It's snowing right here in DC, Virginia, so we got kids running around. But my fear, going to your point, is the Democratic establishment, and it's a big club. They will choose restoration in front of reformation. That's Clinton. That was even Biden. And restoration will be a stopgap. And that stopgap will come because Trump is effing up. If we still have free and fair elections, yeah, they might get the House. Maybe eventually they get the Senate. They might get the presidency if we have elections and we don't have martial law. My fear is if they go with the restoration stopgap, which is what they want, the corporate friendly restoration stopgap instead of reformation, their version of the new Clinton or the Biden, what we're going to get is a stopgap in 2028. And my fear, Krystal, is by 2032, we will have our first neo-Nazi president. Because I don't think people are paying attention to Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and others. They're going further to the left than the Democratic establishment on Israel. They're going further to the left than the Democratic establishment on non-imperialism. They're going further to the left than the Democratic establishment. Even if it's performative, it doesn't matter, as you and I know. On going against the elites, people are sick and tired of the establishment. Young people don't give a shit about Democrat, Republican. There's just as many Democratic Socialists now as there are as MAGA. If you talk to young people, they're like, I don't care about capitalism. Capitalism, what has it done for me? Give me democratic socialism. I'll try MAGA. My fear is if we, in this generational moment that we have, if we don't use this moment to pressure the Democrats, to call the Democratic Party, to reform it, we're going to be stuck with the same old that has ruined us for the past 10 years. And so when people tell me vote blue no matter who, I say bullshit. I'm old enough to remember that you threw Mamdani under the bus. So now is the moment for the rest of us who care about fighting fascism, who realize Trump is the bigger threat. If we want to save our democracy and our country and not have a neo-Nazi, we have to go all in, take out this old guard establishment, pressure them to change. And if they're not willing to change, call them. I wanted your response to my take on this.
There's no doubt about it. And I want people to know, like, I think a big part of the reason why Bernie lost in 2016, he lost in 2020 is, I mean, there was a lot of fuckery, but put that aside, was because the Democratic base, they wanted Medicare for all. They liked Bernie's policy set better, but they were scared into thinking that he couldn't win, right? It was really electability that killed him. Now, that was not correct. Listen, we can't rewrite history or rerun those races to know for sure. But I think he was a much stronger candidate against Trump in 16. I think it was a much stronger candidate in 2020 than Biden, even though Biden was able to get across the finish line. I think that concern needs to be put to bed. We just saw Afton Bain, who is a Democratic Socialist, make up double digits, 13 points in a Trump plus 22 district in Tennessee. And it's not in spite of her ideology. It's in part because of it. Turnout was massive. Nashville turned out for her, loved her. The margins there were insane. And I just talked to her yesterday. She told me there is a significant number of Trump Afton Bain voters because
Not surprised.
she's passionate and people could tell that she meant what she said. And she has a track record in the state as a state representative to back it up, that she meant what she said about caring for people's lives and the affordability crisis. That is the way that we win electorally. And more critically, it is also the way that we win improvements for people's lives so that they are not tempted by fascism again in the future. And it is existential, not just because of the horrific racism that this movement embodies, but also because of the way they have sold the country to a bunch of tech oligarchs who literally want to make all of our labor irrelevant, which makes all of us irrelevant. And what do you think that how do you think that we will all be treated once we are no longer needed to make their products and provide more to their bottom line? So we are truly at this tipping point, and the stakes could not possibly be higher because of the climate crisis, because of rising fascism, and especially because of the tech takeover and the attempt to have AI completely upend the entire social contract and consolidate power in the hands, like complete power in the hands of a few elites, consolidate wealth in the hands of a few elites beyond even what we can imagine now, and make all of us irrelevant to their project.
Folks, the people who voted for Afghan men were also Trumpers who voted for AOC, were also people who voted for Mamdani. You have a winning message, and the fact that you see the establishment run away from it shows you they aren't the fighters that we need, and they're not the fighters that we deserve. We need fighters in this moment willing to stand up for affordable healthcare, Medicare for all, a paid family leave, against the oligarchy, taxing the rich, expanding the Supreme Court. Been saying it for a while, and maybe you should message on it, folks. I mean, historically unpopular Supreme Court. We need fighters. You need people
Yeah.
willing to stand for something, and that's what Mamdani literally gave you the playbook, which is why they hate Mamdani so much, because he won despite and in spite of them, and he showed them a different way possible, and despite them trying to make him into an extremist and this and that, people are like, no, I like his message, and that message runs completely contrary to their entire business model. We need people like Krystal Ball who keep speaking up. Krystal, thank you. I kept you longer because it's always fun when I have you on, and I feel like I'm not alone in the universe, and the universe is not gaslighting me. Can
I
you
feel the same
shamelessly
way.
can you shamelessly promote yourself, please?
Yeah, so breakingpoints.com and Crystal Cow and Friends on Substack. And of course, I'm on Twitter, doom scrolling like everybody else. So there you go.
And Crystal, well, Crystal's the better half, but Kyle, if you think I go against MAGA, my God, he just gets zero Fs. My Lord, I love it. I mean, he just takes them on, and they might hate him more than they hate me and Crystal, but actually, I still win because I'm brown and Muslim. And if I may
True.
shamelessly say, for another hour, I've kept everything free on the Left Hook. There are no paywalls because I'm a terrible capitalist. I depend on the kindness of strangers. So anyone who likes what you've seen and you can become a paid subscriber, please do. I have 800 kids. You can help me feed two of them. And this is the terrible, horrible, bad capitalist Black Friday sale for another hour. I usually have it $5 a month for anyone who wants to become a paid subscriber, but I have 25% off. I just put the link. So it's $3.50 a month, $38 a year. And even if you don't have the money, it's okay because there's no paywalls. Because I believe, what did they say? Democracy dies in darkness. Someone said that back in the day.
Mm.
Folks, I wonder who. Yeah, folks, be kind to each other. Enjoy the snow. Enjoy the weekend. Crystal, thanks for making time, even though you were super busy. I'm gonna have Heather Cox Richardson at 3. I had
Oh,
Danielle
nice.
Moody, Crystal Ball, and Heather Cox Richardson. It's like a trio of badass women at 3 p.m. Come back, folks. Be kind, be decent, and please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you. Bye, y'all.
Bye.